Welcome to Season 5 of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast with Adina, Brian, Cris, and Steve, the biggest sci-fi podcast in the galaxy. The adventure is just beginning here at the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, and we invite you to come aboard the Starship Tangent. We know you'll enjoy the conversation, the laughter, the banter back and forth, and most of all, friends who love hanging out to talk about all things science fiction. Set your phasers to fun. Here we go.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, the show where we have really fun discussions about all things sci-fi. But before I forget, we are part of the Trek Geeks Network, where you can find other really cool podcasts all about Star Trek, such as the Sci-Fi Sisters. And today, I want to talk about Trek because, well, that's what we do. We have discussions about other sci-fi, but then somebody brings up the Trek word and we talk about it. But today,
this is a good four-letter word, right?
The Trek word. Is that the T word? The T word?
Just the word Trek.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Okay, just make sure.
But yeah, no, it's a good word. I love it. Friends hate it probably, but I love it. And today, because we are talking about Trek, I want to talk about one of the most divisive characters possibly in Star Trek history, and that is Neelix from Star Trek Voyager. You love him, you might hate him, but you definitely have an opinion on Neelix. I love him, but there's a lot of stuff that Neelix does that's not so cool, but there's a lot of good stuff about Neelix. So today, I want to hopefully redeem the character of Neelix, and to help me do this are my usual fantastic sci-fi podcast hosts, Adina Mignona.
Hello.
Brian Donahue.
Yo, it's Brian.
Oh, yeah.
From Ohio.
Classic. And Steve Merkin.
All the way from the coast of California. How are you today?
I'm good, and I'm from Toronto. That's how we
most
say
boring hello. I'm now disappointed in myself.
Would you like another hello?
No.
Hello round two from Adina Mignona.
Hello. It's like the Three
No,
Stooges.
I don't have an exciting hello. I just don't.
Okay.
Yes, and don't
carry on.
And don't do howdy like Minnie Pearl.
Nope.
No, thank you.
No, that's not
I don't
me.
get the reference. I'll have to Google it. Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of places we can go in this episode, but for the purposes of a Neelix discussion, I thought it would be helpful to look at two episodes. One represents what I think is the very worst of Neelix, even though it gets a little bit better by the end. And the second episode is one that I think is probably the best of Neelix, why I think Neelix is a good character. The first is parturition. Anybody want to help me out? I still can't say the word.
Is that how you say it?
Parturition?
I thought it was just oh gosh, I don't know now.
Yeah. See, anyway, regardless of how you pronounce it, it's the episode you might remember where Neelix gets super jealous of Tom Paris and wastes perfectly good pasta in a food fight for no reason. That's the episode.
You mean hair
pasta, but I'm like, the way Neelix described it,
Pasta?
I'm like, I'm kind of in.
That's very English way of saying it's pasta. You say it that way. Pasta.
How do you say it?
Pasta. Pasta.
How did I say it? I don't know.
You said pasta.
Pasta.
Like it's in the past.
Yeah, it's pasta because it's from the 90s.
It's
Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing.
It's right. Okay.
But it's
parturition.
Thank you. Yes, I've watched this episode a lot, but I don't know how to pronounce it. Thank you. But yeah, so my take on the episode is that we see the super jealous version of Neelix, the one where you're kind of like, it's a little bit icky. But let's just go around the table and share your thoughts on Neelix, your thoughts of Neelix before watching the episode and then during the episode.
Well, I'll go first.
Go ahead, Brian.
I just want it known clear, far and wide, that I did not interrupt Chris's introduction. Just want everybody to remember that, okay? Chris.
Bonus points for Gryffindor for doing that.
Gryffindor. That sounds like a street down the road.
Okay.
Pasta.
Anyways, we've done like 20 tangents already on this episode.
I think so.
Neelix was always one of those characters that I was like, there were episodes I really liked how they used him and what he did and what he said and what he had to do. And then episodes where I'm like, they could kill this character off yesterday, and I think I would be okay with this show still. So the two episodes you had us watch, I think that now, being older, more mature, I think I appreciate Neelix a lot more than I did when I've watched it when it was in its first run. And I don't remember exactly. I'm sure I could do the math, but I don't really want to. How young I
That's
was back then. But I think these two episodes at least, I appreciate his character much more. So
okay. Awesome.
All right. I go next. I never considered him a strong character, and he was always there, but he seemed to he always was like meddling in. He's like that
he was always
person
there.
huh?
He was
That's
always
true.
there.
He was always there, and just like he's on the side, kind of peripheral, and he's the cook, right? I mean, he's the cook. So is he sometimes more like the bartender where people come and sit down and say, "Hey, Neelix, what's going on?" Or Neelix say, "What's happening with you?" And he never really had the impact for me that other characters had in the series. And like you said, Brian, if they wrote off his character, I don't think the show would have changed, either gotten worse or gotten better. He just been another character that had been come and gone.
Yeah, that's fair.
I
Adina?
think.
Wow.
Oh,
I
I'm
feel like I
sorry.
have a very different opinion. No, go
Yeah.
go for it.
I think like he was kind of the what I mean, was he supposed to be the Quark of Voyager, that type of character? I mean, you mentioned bartender, the cook. He was also supposed to be their expert, right? Of that region
Yeah.
of space. And I think they sometimes played that better than other times.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I felt he was a little too feely, like, just too emotional. And I think that's what turned me off originally from the
That's
character.
interesting.
Adina, please.
So I think I differ quite a bit from Steve and Brian because I really like Neelix. Neelix to me was one of the highlights of just Voyager in general. And I think
Interesting.
it's because, and before rewatching any of these episodes, and I think it was because he was different. And I think just especially over the series, really well developed in terms of the details of his home planet, his family, his background, all those things were just interesting because hey, here's something new. Okay, yes, we have a Vulcan on board. We've seen Vulcans. We've have like a half Klingon before. We've seen whatever. So bringing in a character, and I think they could only really do this effectively by introducing someone in the new quadrant that they're in, as opposed to bringing someone from home, essentially. So I always liked it because of that. And for that reason, it was just he's bringing a lot more color into the whole situation. So I'm
That's
definitely
true.
a big Neelix fan.
No,
Sure.
but you're right. He was probably the most emotional character on the show.
Well, and he's not Starfleet. So
Right.
he doesn't have that kind of background where you're trained to do the engineering or the security or command or any of those things that probably beat some of that out of you in order to focus on your job. So he really brings in a lot of color, which is, I think, needed.
Whereas opposed to Seven of Nine came off as very unemotional.
Because she was Borg for
exactly.
her whole life. Yes.
So there was and there in between is the Doctor.
Yeah. And I do want to add too that I appreciated Neelix for what he was supposed to do for the show. He just wasn't my favorite. Like I was a big Harry Kim fan. I always liked Harry Kim and Tom Paris, that dynamic. Felt like Voyager did that really well. And there's something else
I love the Doctor. I love the
the
Doctor.
Doctor.
On
He's
show.
like, for me, he's the standout of the show.
Yeah.
Like, it's the Doctor in
interesting.
Seven.
I know
Like,
a lot of people think that, but I was, and that, again, I'm dedicated. I'm halfway committed to doing a total Voyager rewatch because again, in the original run, I was frustrated with Voyager because I felt like they did kind of have they just played some of the regular traditional characters. They had the Spock character, which was Tuvok. We had kind of a Data character in the Doctor. We had a Worf character in B'Elanna Torres. So I felt like there was just some easy things they kind of put in there that they felt maybe people would expect and want. And so Neelix being perhaps the most out of the box character
I think that's why I liked him so much.
Yeah, probably. But for the Doctor, like I'm interested to watch it again, is what I'm saying, to see if my perspective and changes on all the characters.
And to be honest, as I've said in the past, by the time Voyager was showing up, I was going through Star Trek burnout. I just had so much of it, one series after the next, rather than TOS and then a big void of literally almost 20 years between series and series. And then you get bang, another series, bang, and how are they changing it? Okay, well, now they're lost in the Delta Quadrant. And I don't even remember from the first episode how they ended up there in the first place, why they were stuck there. But I understand it was, putting them out all by themselves and their adventure of, being lost, almost like, I hate to say it, but almost like Space 1999, where the moon is cast away and they got to figure out how they're going to survive. And so that's what the adventure was. But by that time I was kind of like worn out. So, I don't have a lot of fond memories, and maybe like yourself, Brian, maybe it's worthy of a rewatch. I think
it is. And I think too, you guys should watch, Adina's pointed out in the past, I don't remember if we did it on air, but the Center Seat documentary that's on Prime.
Right.
Yes. So good. It goes through each series and the original films. I assume it's going to go through the Next Generation films too. I don't know if it does, though, when it was made. But it talks about Voyager, and I was surprised because I always thought Voyager was this phenomenal hit. It really wasn't. And so that was surprising to me. It had its fan base, but it wasn't the overwhelming hit that Paramount was really hoping for, especially in talking about launching that horrible network UPN,
Oh, UPN.
I liked a couple of the shows on it, but
I mean, I remember though when Voyager was premiering, because I was very excited about the female captain.
Absolutely.
And I think one of our listeners, who was my roommate in college at the time, Tess, I think we watched it in our dorm room together when that premiered.
Okay.
I think.
Wow. It was a big deal.
But I remember I remember.
It was huge.
I was I was in the middle of college then, knowing that I was going into a very I was majoring in a very male dominated field, going into a very male dominated industry. So to see already on screen, okay, Star Trek, this amazing thing we're having a female captain. It was I remember feeling, wow, this is awesome. I'm so happy. And again, it turned out Voyager overall has never supplanted, Next Generation is my favorite series, but I still love Catherine Janeway and the concept
she's
of it.
Amazing.
But we should probably talk about Neelix more.
So I just want to say one thing that sort of ties us back to Neelix, and I think this is a bit different than where I was planning on going, but I think it's something we have to address with the character, is that I think Neelix is a product of the fact that, like if Neelix is like Voyager, he had all this potential, but then they didn't really deliver on that a lot of the times. I think that was a big issue with Voyager. But my impression of Neelix growing up was I always liked him because I always felt like he was like the uncle, like a godfather, like the parent, because he was always so helpful and really, was friendly towards people. And that's why I picked our second episode, Once Upon a Time, because of him and Naomi Wildman and how he is with her.
He was her godfather.
Yeah, he was her godfather. Exactly. So, but I always thought like he's the godfather, but I always felt like he just reminded me like of an uncle, like of a friendly uncle that, was always there to help you out when you needed it. And then so rewatching Neelix or rewatching Voyager much later in life, it's like, oh, wow, I forgot that Neelix was kind of terrible in the early seasons, because there's the whole thing with Kes where I feel like there's an age difference like between the actors, and then also like it's hard when it's like she's 2 years old, but it's in Ocampa time, which is different. But then like the reason I picked our first episode is just because of how jealous he is. And there's other episodes that illustrate that too, where he's just super jealous of other people who are around Kes. And he seemed very overprotective. So I thought, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to jump in and say, that doesn't. So the relationship always did bother me. And I was very thankful when they were doing their own thing and had their own scenes, and eventually they, broke up and everything. The relationship just always, I think possibly because of the age thing ish. I don't know, but it just never bothered. It always bothered me. But then again, I'm going to say when I've gone back to think about it, in all of Trek, most relationships between main characters have bothered me. The exception being Troy and Riker. That one always felt right. Every other main character, like Odo and Kira, I never got behind that. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people love it. I never.
I am a huge defender. Actually, I have a video about that coming out hopefully next week.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, but speaking of Neelix, so we're on Neelix.
Yeah.
But that whole concept of how jealous he was, and especially in that episode, though, that just didn't bother me or didn't make me not like him more because it felt very realistic.
Mm-hmm.
People get jealous, and sometimes people misbehave and punch out a guy. Like
really
that
stupid
happens
things.
In real life.
Yes,
and people do. So it felt just natural and real. Not that he's like some horrible guy, but he just has these feelings, and people have those feelings. That's a real thing.
Tom
Paris. Definitely a real thing.
Can I tell you a real story?
A real story?
When my best friend, real story, when my best friend Dean went off to college to learn gunsmithing, he told me, would you please make sure that his girlfriend at the time, Ruth, would you make sure that she's, watch her and make sure that everything's okay, that she isn't going out with other guys and she stays true to me, blah, blah, blah. So I said, sure. So I would spend time with Ruth. We'd go out to dinner. We'd go see a movie, something. He came back from college, and he literally had a jealousy attack saying that I was stealing his girlfriend. And I said, no, I'm doing what you asked me to do. But his jealousy was, I had to calm him down.
Now,
so it's true that can happen.
Yes.
It can happen.
Yeah. And it can be ugly, but it's real. And it's not unrecoverable in the sense of we all know that this happens to people. This isn't the end of the world, that people have real emotions. And I was thinking a lot about like why this bothers people, because I know that this bothers people.
Yeah.
And so there's something about, I feel like we put the main characters in Trek, in all series of Trek, on this pedestal, and they have to be like heroes and perfect. And it's okay when they misbehave because they were taken hostage by, they're inhabited by an alien or there's a disease or whatever. But when they have real negative emotions, we don't accept it. We don't allow it. And that's weird or something. I don't know what it is, but
well, by the end of the episode, they're friends again because the bonding that they had over the little alien creature. So they got past there. They got past it.
Through it, which is good, but but so I guess the moral of that story, my tirade is it doesn't bother me because it's real.
Right, it's real. It's just I think like even like correct me if I'm wrong, but even behind the scenes, they're like we got to deal with this Neelix and Paris thing. Like this is too much. Let's just have an episode dedicated to let's have it be the focus and then resolve it, because I feel like there's so many episodes, and this is the problem when you're only just talking about one. It's hard not to think about the others, but it just felt like Neelix for a large part of season 1 and season 2 is just default in that mode. Like granted he's doing other stuff, but I feel like as soon as he deviates from that and becomes Godfather Neelix, I feel like his character is much stronger.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that's an interesting point, though. You're right, because we do tend to I think we forget that, for one thing, Neelix isn't Starfleet. And we also tend to forget that our heroes are also human. Like, I feel like Trek
human-ish.
characters... Yeah, human-ish.
Human-ish.
Yes,
humanoid.
Yes.
Human-ish.
Yeah.
In that they will still make mistakes and they're not as perfect as we think they are, or we hope they are.
But we don't allow for that. Like we're apparently just generally, I mean, I allow for that, but I think generally we don't allow for that. I think
it's hard because I feel like TNG has taught us that if anybody misbehaves, it's for those reasons you mentioned. There's an alien, they're possessed, some weird thing is going on. Nobody ever just has an argument.
Sarek is throwing his negative emotions at everybody.
Yeah, exactly. It's that episode. Issue. It's So no, I definitely take your point with that. Now, how did people feel? Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I'm sorry, Chris. So how do you feel about, because we're kind of hyper focused here on Neelix, but
That's what the episode's about.
Right. Well,
our episode today.
But Tom Paris's character, though, he admittedly had some feelings, and he shared that with Harry.
Right.
And so he did what any guy would do, what any person would do is, when Neelix got mad at him, act like there was nothing at all there. And so for me,
it's
I guess
also normal.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's normal.
Yeah.
He did. I mean, he basically did the best he could. So yes, feelings happen, right?
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to act on them. He told his closest friend about them, which, okay, sure. He told us, but then he wasn't going to do anything, and he wasn't doing anything about it. So, yeah. And then, so when confronted about it, there's no reason for him to be honest. He doesn't have to be honest about it, especially if it's not going to help. Right. So that's, again, all normal stuff.
Well, I didn't think there was anything wrong with how I think he tried to do his best. Like he was trying to be, he was just like, I don't even want to have lunch. Harry just like, can we just have lunch together? And then
that was hysterical. That was hysterical.
And then Harry
he was avoiding her at all costs.
Yeah. So it's like, I feel like, and this is where it's hard to like not separate the writing, because if they had written him strong enough to really show his worth, to see this is only one aspect of Neelix, I think it would have been easier. But I feel like this episode does a good job of, they deal with it in a good way. And then we get to see the more fatherly side of Neelix as he's trying to care for the infant, the baby. I guess is the best way of describing it.
Neelix was hyperly emotional.
Yeah.
It's either one extreme or the other. Either he's super jealous or super nurturing. It's and that's what his character, I think, was created to be, the hyper have the hyper emotions of anyone.
And I love
who directed this episode?
I know, Johnny F.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
Oh yes, the very beginning. Oh yeah,
Jonathan Frakes directed the episode.
Oh my goodness, I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
So
I always watch to see who the directors are.
Yeah,
I usually do. I can't believe I missed that. I think I was making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for my kids, is why I missed that.
Nice.
And you didn't bring some for the whole crew? Thanks a lot.
My son was pissed at me today because I left the crust on his bread, and
normally
Mom makes the sandwiches, and I helped her out a little bit extra the other day. But anyways, I digress.
Yes, thank you.
Speaking of hair pasta, fantastic comedic point in the episode, but I loved the humor in Parturition, or whatever we're calling it.
Parturition.
Really great humor in this, and I think it was good they put some humor into this to make it, obviously lighter, but also to show kind of the ridiculous nature of how jealousy can make us behave. You know what I mean? Like, to just kind of put a little tickle in there for us. But I love, Cris, the progression of Neelix, because even though this is like a part of his character where you're describing it as it's just not the best of Neelix, some of the worst of Neelix, I think it becomes some of the best of Neelix, because the ability to admit that you overreacted, the ability to forgive, and to not just say I forgive you, but they become friends at the end of this episode.
Yeah, they become like legitimate friends.
That's like some of the best of anybody.
And I'll be honest, part of it was my memory, because when I wrote the questions, I was like, no, actually, I'm trying to remember when I watched it, but it's like, it's been a long time since I've seen it. But I feel like you're right. Like, there is a really good progression. Like, when they eventually become friends and they admit to each other they're like that, they overreacted. And they even have like date night later in the series when they're like, hey, let's go take our ships out on date night, which is a fun, it's not a great episode, but like Tom gets a new ship.
Okay.
Oh, and then Neelix is like, oh, I got my, like, I can't remember the name of his freighter that he has at the start of the show. And he's like, let's take our ships out for a spin. And it's just like, it's like, hey, two bros having a cool, fun night. Yeah, it's like season 6.
Chris, I think Adina's dying here to talk.
I'm going to say something.
Say something.
Can I'm
dying.
The senator from Louisiana yields his time to Adina. Go right ahead, Adina.
I just remembered the one other time I can think of in any episode where a character misbehaved and they weren't under the influence of anything.
Okay.
Original series, The Trouble with Tribbles, when Scotty starts the brawl with the Klingons.
It isn't. What is it? It isn't. I didn't mean to say that the Enterprise should be hauling garbage.
I mean,
Yes.
Enterprise is garbage.
Yes. So it did happen at least one other time.
Yes, he did that because he was defending the ship. Of course, he didn't defend Kirk, but he defended the ship.
The point is he went and he started a brawl. He started punching people.
Yes,
Say that again, Lassie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Drink.
But we don't. For some reason, I think, I don't know, somehow maybe because of the times or something, or because he's Scottish, and I guess we expect that's how they act, or something. We don't ever bring this up as like, oh gosh, Scotty had some troubling behavior. No one has ever said that about that scene.
Not about that scene. I mean, there's other characters who we can bring up, but they're from another series. We don't need to get into that.
But why not that scene? But why don't we do it for that? I guess.
Well,
again,
just because I don't want to start a tangent. I have a lot of
it?
issues with O'Brien and like his situation. I love O'Brien to death, but I've got issues with some of his behavior. Small things, but it's just like,
well, we'll talk.
It's not. That's
I just had to remember there was another time when someone actually got out of line, very inappropriately got out of line. Nearly could have possibly caused like an interspecies
intergalactical,
actually.
Yes.
But okay.
I just felt bad for the bartender. He wanted his drink.
Got great questions. Why don't you continue on with them, Chris? What do you think of the episode?
Yeah, overall, what did you think about is that what you're talking about, this episode?
Yeah.
Okay. We're kind of all over the place.
I think Steve should go first since he's so excited.
Final thoughts about the episode.
Right. I think the writer watched the movie Enemy Mine. In that, a human and an alien are on a space. They crash land on a planet. They have to find shelter. They seek shelter. A baby lizard is born.
Right.
It brings the characters together, and they're finally saved by the humans.
Right. Okay.
Also, there's one other thing about these two episodes that we watched in that I did not know, but Tom Paris is supposed to be the best pilot on the Voyager, right?
Yeah.
Yet he crashes two shuttlecrafts. Of course, one is lost completely in the episode we're talking about, and the other one they have to transport it back up to the Voyager, or it's lost forever. So if he's this great pilot, I don't think I'd want him flying me around.
Out of his control.
Ion storms. Ion storms.
Yeah. Darn ion storms.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I have one question for Dina after we do final thoughts.
Okay.
Even though it's technically
all right.
Save it for then.
So
but otherwise, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. I thought this episode was delightfully humorous and a little ridiculous in all the right ways. And I really love how Neelix just kind of came to understand. And even Tom Paris was honest. I loved that. They had a real honest, person to person moment. And it was great. I really like that. We need more honest moments like that amongst us humans here on Earth, to where we can just be frank with each other, but with the purpose of, working through this stuff. And I love that they did that. I think Gene Roddenberry would have been proud of this episode.
Yeah, they definitely have like the good, like, I don't even know what you call it, but I feel like in a sitcom, if you were to watch like an old like classic family sitcom, you get the dun, what it's like they have their lesson music, and it's like they have the music where the moment where it's like, okay, let's get heartfelt and let's figure this out. And it's like that's what Trek is about. Like it's these conversations where, hey, let's work it out, and also let's save the day by saving the alien, which is really cool. Or not really save the day, but it's like, hey, we're doing a good thing, and the alien was like, oh, kind of like, yeah, you did it. Even
sometimes
I didn't really say thank you.
It takes one thing to unite two people or two nations, one common ground thing where they, this Neelix passionately argues that they care for this little creature, and Tom Paris reluctantly agrees. and they start to love it and care for it and nurse for it. And it was just great. Like, that was their common ground. That's what brought them together to talk about everything and to overcome their situations. So it was beautiful. I liked it.
Adina.
Well, I'm just going to say, Brian really said everything that needed to be said about this episode, and I enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
Good.
Same boat. Same thing.
And it did make me cry for 1 second.
That one didn't make me cry. I wasn't too emotional with that one, but the next episode, oof, that was rough. But last question. This is one's for Adina. Trijemic particles.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean,
That's
again, but that's fine. Inventing
I know.
random stuff. That's what it's all about. So that's fine. That's fine. But yes, that's completely invented.
It's just like I wish they had picked something that they had already made up. It's such a stupid way of saying it, but like go back to something that we already know that exists in their universe. It's just like yet another thing. But
I'm okay with in Star Trek especially. I am okay with the yet another thing, and I do think that people have to do that carefully because yes, it can turn into yet another thing. But to some, especially given that they are in a new part of the galaxy, I think they can have a little bit more leeway than that kind of yet another thing happening here in the Alpha Quadrant.
Okay, fair.
At least that's how I make my peace.
I'll buy that. Okay. Yeah. All right. So Once Upon a Time, and for those listening, this is, and maybe if you haven't seen the episode in a long time, this is one where Tom, Tuvok, and Ensign Wildman are on the Delta Flyer, and they crash into a planet and get buried beneath a bunch of rock, and it looks like they're going to die. And so Neelix has to basically entertain Naomi and help her through this situation while they figure out how to go get the crew back. So what did everyone think about it? Overall impressions for the episode, the Neelix character.
Okay. Who's going to go first?
Who has thoughts?
I'll be honest.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to very quickly, really because of just how the week aligned, I only rewatched the first half of the episode.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Okay.
I know.
Oh, you're going to get the big payoff at the end.
We don't even know you anymore, Adina.
I know. Well, I feel like I sort of remember it from watching it years ago. I feel like I still have some memories. And of course, I kind of, read what happened, but I only actually, But I watched other, because I wanted to also watch like other bits of Neelix and other episodes too.
Yeah.
I got to say, I thought this was a solid episode. It's not going to be on anyone's list for greatest Trek episodes ever. But I like Naomi. I like her mom. And being a dad, man, I was thinking I was the one in that shuttle hurt and everything. And I think I cried on this one too. And and those that know me really well know that's no one's going, oh, that's a shocker. Brian cried at a movie or a TV show. Anyways, I thought it was great. And I got to say, there was a scene that really made me go, whoa. And I thought it was a wonderful little scene on the shuttle where Tuvok actually offers some sympathy and some help and advice. That was a really great moment in that episode. And I agree. I just loved also, like, Neelix is just doing his best to be a good godfather and to protect her. Yeah. I want to say, though, I do have an issue, and I know that he's not Starfleet, but I feel like he snapped at Captain Janeway. It was just a little over the top. I would have liked a little.
Oh yeah. When he was yelling at her. Yeah.
Again, I was surprised because again, I haven't watched Voyager a lot. I would have thought, oh my, Janeway's going to put him in his place here any minute. But she has great sympathy for him and understanding where he's coming from, and gives him a lot of leeway. And so I thought that was pretty awesome too. Like, she didn't just, he wasn't really trying to circumvent her command, or he wasn't trying to disrespect her. He was emotional about the situation, and she allowed him that kind of space to express that, and then brought him into her lounge, whatever office area, and they got frank about it. So I thought that was a cool part of the show.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. It's like really good episode. It also just was really emotional because, well, it made me cry a lot just because like even though my mom had passed like or 2 years ago now, I feel like it's hitting me a lot more in the last like month or so. And so some of that stuff was hard to watch, but then it's like, okay, I'm also like, hey, it's okay because it works out for her. Like she's like Ensign Wildman is fine, and they get like I was pretty sure that was going to happen, and then also I'm in a place now where I feel like okay, I can handle it. So it wasn't the hardest thing, but it was still rough to watch on and off. And I'm like, all right, let's go back to Ion Storms. Let's get some more action just for a minute. Let me just take a breather.
Well, I gotta say too, Chris, I'm surprised. I feel like the special effects on this show aren't holding up for me like they do on Deep Space Nine. I feel like there's a difference. The special effects. I like all the shuttlecraft scenes, especially on the planet. I felt looked like they were, obviously from the era of the show. It was at the 90s, early 2000s, and so, or was it just the two? When did the show come out?
No, it was late 90s.
Late 90s. So
yeah, this is season 5. So this would have been
yeah. So, I know at some point Deep Space Nine transitioned to all CGI. And I don't know the history of Voyager when they did that, if they did that, but that's another thing that kind of surprised me about these 2 episodes. While it's okay, it's passable. I'm going to watch it because it's Trek. But I feel like Deep Space Nine's effects held up much better than Voyager's has.
And even Next Generation too.
I would agree with that.
Next Generation holds up for me a way. Voyager does not in that.
Isn't
regard.
that interesting?
So there's 2 things.
It's got to be budget related, I think.
Well, it's hard because I think like for next gen, we get the remastered now, which is gorgeous, and it's so hard to go back and like even I see clips of TNG before the remaster, it's hard to watch. And then I find like because I watch a lot of my Trek on my phone, and then so I was watching Voyager on the big screen, and it's just like whoa, like because it doesn't hold up very well. So I don't know if maybe that's a factor of it too.
Yeah, I think honestly, like I remember at the time watching it going, I just don't like the sets. I don't like the Voyager sets. The interior of that ship.
Oh, you don't like the interior?
I did not like. I hate that long table, the ready room table. I don't think
love
that
it. What
looks,
a great place to lounge.
I don't like that table at all. And so that was part of it too. The interior of the ship. I even originally remember going. And I know it's a smaller ship. It's supposed to be different, and I'm kind of an Enterprise purist.
It was lit very different from Enterprise.
Yeah.
Which I think makes a huge difference.
Yeah, definitely different.
Okay. Before you go.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah. Steve's still here.
Hi, folks.
Patiently.
I'm just sitting back here. But I don't remember this episode at all. But again, like I said, I was by the 5th season of that, I was pretty burnt out with Star Trek altogether. So I don't remember it. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions. Hopefully you guys can answer these.
Yeah.
Oh.
This Willy Wonka world that she has on the holodeck, was it on any prior episodes?
I don't think so. I think this is the first episode.
Because everyone in all the crew members remembered vividly how wonderful it was. All this episode and that episode, and I played it as a kid, so I thought, like, oh my God, this is really something very special for them to make such a big deal out of it. But as it turns out, it's only a 1-episode event or 1-episode storyline. So that was a little confusing. Again, having no memory. Naomi, she has the little things on her forehead, but her mom is human.
Yeah.
So where did that come from? I don't know. And if you can explain that, I was a little curious about that makeup that they did for her, even though she was very human in every other aspect. And
let's answer that, Chris.
Please go ahead?
So this is where I get confused. So I know I can't remember what species she is, but like her father is a different species. So
Okay.
she's half human,
She's-
half the other species.
Okay.
But what I can't figure out about the character,
Katarian.
Katarian, do they
Okay.
age differently?
I didn't remember that. I am just looking it up on Memory Alpha while
Well,
we're
I was
talking.
gonna
just so
say,
people don't think I'm
that's
like
okay.
amazing.
That's why it
Yeah.
exists, to be able to answer these
Yep.
questions.
Yep.
But the
Yep.
aging has always confused me because she's born in season 2.
Uh-huh.
And she's like actually not even, well, it's such a good episode where it's like
Okay.
she's not a clone, she's kind of a clone. She's born in season 2, and then by season 5, so it's only 3 years later. And I think they go by the same amount of time, so it's only 3 years
Mhm.
for the characters. But then
Okay.
she's already like 9 or 10,
Yeah.
so that's
And-
always kind of surprised
And
me.
from the very beginning, Neelix was attached to her. She's been
Yeah.
with other
Yeah.
episodes, so they had established
Yes.
that relationship because it
And
seemed
he is the
ra-
godfather. He is her godfather.
Right, right. So
He
that's
is
been
her
established.
godfather.
And I
yes.
accepted those things for face value because, having no memory or not having watched the series. And then the other thing was, and it was kind of a little strange, and maybe I'm missing it, but it seemed like everyone was concerned about Naomi and her mom, that they were going to that she was going to survive, that she wasn't going to lose her daughter was going to lose her mom, and all that, and that was really, really telling about Neelix having gone through the loss of his family. I mean, there was a quick backstory there, which was great to establish why Neelix feels the way he does. But it just seemed to be that not everybody was concerned about the welfare of Tom or Tuvok. It's like, oh, by the way, they're also there on the shuttle and they're going to die as well. But it just seemed like they were more concerned about Naomi and her feelings about her mom.
Yeah,
Well, because
seemed
they
a little
weren't
strange.
leaving a. Well, no, not strange
they weren't
at all.
leaving in.
They
Yeah.
weren't leaving a kid behind. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Like that is
Well,
a bigger. I'm going to say. I mean, it's sad if any of them were
Right.
bad for happened, but no, I'm going to say I feel like it's a little bigger deal when you're leaving a kid behind.
And they also threw in the fact that the only one severely injured on the shuttle crash was the mom, not the
Yeah.
other two characters. But I
Yeah.
did like the fact that there was a Shuttle Pod 1 moment where Tom is recording his last messages and he turns to Tuvok and he says, "Are you going to do that?" He goes, "No, I like to write things down," and I thought that was really a great moment of each one of them dealing with their potential loss. So that was really good. But then again, at the very end, in the last, as with most Star Trek, in the last 5
It is
minutes,
a Star Trek episode.
it's solved. The problem is solved in the simplest way. They get out there and Mom is completely healed. Boom.
Again, it is a Star Trek episode.
I
Well, I
know,
mean, the doc can
exactly.
cure cancer like
This-
instantly.
Would
You
not
can cure
accept, with the
anything.
exception of Deep Space Nine. Get into the 4th and remaining seasons of Deep Space Nine. That's not as true. That they
Well, you
wrap
mean with-
everything up
with-
in the last
Oh yeah, for sure.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
But like Voyager is very much like a let's reset
Still
at the end
episodic.
of every episode.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. So
Because
it's
we
like,
want to get done through the story. We throw in the ion storm. It makes it's the disruptor in the story. There's always the countdown. Like, we got to get to this done before it's too late or whatever. The warp's going to blow or who knows what. So
Yeah.
they had that. It was, again, that old Star Trek formula that was in the episode.
Absolutely. I got to say, Chris, thank you for having these 2 episodes for us to look through, because I'm now a remade, reincarnated, refreshed in my fandom of the Tom Paris character. I
okay,
forgot
good.
that
'Cause
I really did love his character.
Yeah,
I
I'm a
was-
Tom Paris fan too.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I say Tom Paris. Tom Paris.
You said something.
Yeah.
I
How do you feel
said-
about Nick Locarno?
Yeah,
I
I
still have-
kind of wish they would have just made him Nick Locarno, honestly.
They wanted to,
But-
but I think there was some rights issues where apparently this is, if I'm wrong,
Really?
please correct
Okay.
me in the Facebook group or wherever. But I think it's because another writer that they had who wasn't, or a writer specifically came up with that character. So if they were going to use Nick Locarno, they would have had to pay that individual rights for the use of that name. I think is
Interesting.
what it came down to.
Interesting.
So they had to have Tom Paris with a very similar story, but not quite the same story.
Not quite the
Um,
same, which is I think a good thing, and also wink, wink, nudge, nudge, a good thing for
Yeah.
recent things that we've seen.
Yeah, which even though I knew it was happening, I saw it on my shorts feed, and I'm like still behind, so I got to finish that up.
Okay.
But
Is this a Lower Decks thing?
Yeah.
This might be
Okay,
a lower
gotcha.
deck.
This is
Oh, I
something lower
haven't
decks.
watched the last episode, season 10 yet.
So all I'm going to say, well, so
Episode
if
10,
you,
yeah.
so
They've
well,
done
this is
10
the thing. Is if
episodes
you
already?
haven't,
Yeah.
they just had the
Yeah.
season finale of
10
season
last
4.
week.
So
No,
No,
that's
no, no,
this
no,
is
No,
10
I said it
episodes
wrong.
of
I said
season
10
4.
season. I meant to
I'm
say
like,
episode
whoa,
10.
what have I missed?
No,
Episode 10
this
of
is
season
4.
4.
If this
Okay.
is season 4, it was episode 10, which now it seems like that's the Trek thing. 10 episodes.
I know, it's
Yeah.
really
Period.
annoying. We need more.
Not
Well, so
enough.
after episode 9, I made my kiddo watch First Duty, the Star Trek Next Generation episodes, First
One of the
Duty and then
best.
Lower Decks.
Yes.
And then we go to watch the season finale of season 4, and 2 seconds in, I look
I
at
was-
Frank. I'm like, "You glad I made you watch those?" He's like,
Oh,
"Yeah."
I'm
Because
curious.
that
I'm
means
like,
he got everything that you saw, like especially right on the opening.
Okay.
Scene.
oh, geez. Okay.
They have to catch up. Everyone catch up on Lower
Yeah.
Decks. So we can talk about
I
it.
just got one more episode. That's
Really,
just
that's
got
more
number
for
10.
the-
Number 10.
Catch up. Catch
Yeah.
up.
Okay.
So
Okay.
any-
Neelix.
Yeah.
That's
Any
to
final
Neelix, what
thoughts
we're talking.
about Neelix and about how he handled the situation before you wrap it up?
Okay.
I think Neelix did the best he could. I think he was trying to keep Naomi's best interest at heart. And I loved how Janeway really was like, gave him space and time to think through his ultimate decision, but kind of really laid it out there and said, Neelix, I need you to tell her, in essence, it's time she knows. She's a smart girl. She's sensing something is off. Sometimes you just got to say
Yeah.
it. You just got to go there and, like Janeway said, walk her through it. Be there for her
Mhm.
as she responds and reacts to it. So I thought this episode was rather delightful and fun, heartwarming and touching. Again, I'm still not like this huge Neelix fan, although I'm super excited to meet Ethan Phillips at Trek Long Island.
Oh,
Mhm.
Mhm.
in May.
that's
Wondering
gonna
which
be
one of us
like-
is going to bring that up first.
Yeah, that's gonna be super cool. Armin Shimmerman too, but I digress. And
I
Oh,
will
that's
I will
gonna be
say
wild.
this. I will say
Maybe
this.
Swank, yeah.
My very first Star Trek convention, I wasn't a big Neelix fan at all. But he showed up on stage to talk and literally had us all belly laughing.
I bet.
The man personally
I can
is
believe that.
extremely funny. And I went, this is the same character. This is the same guy. He's just so darn funny. So it's acting, kids. It's
Mhm.
acting.
Yep, exactly. Adina, final thoughts?
Well, so about this episode or about Neelix in general?
I guess about this episode about Neelix in
Okay.
general.
Well,
It's a
so
bit of a
about Neelix in
mishmash,
general, 'cause
mishmash.
again, I don't have a lot to say about the specific episode other than, generally, yes, I like Uncle Neelix or Godfather Neelix with Naomi. I think that was always
Mhm.
lovely. But the episode that I'm surprised you didn't tell us that we should watch is the one, what was it, Endgame? It was the one where Neelix leaves the ship.
Oh, you know what? That would have been good.
Because
That
I feel
would've
like that
been
is
good.
like actually a really powerful Neelix episode.
Yeah.
Because that's a big deal. He's been with these people for several years, and he's leaving to basically instantly have like a new instant family, which he just clicked with these people, and it just made it
yeah.
just made sense. And even though I'm generally against the whole like insta love thing, it was a different kind. This was a different kind of
Mhm.
love. It was more of a family love versus a sexual lusty thing.
Mhm.
And it just fit. I felt it fit really well. And so
Hmm.
I'm actually just surprised that you didn't tell us, hey, go watch this
Yeah,
episode
that would have
to
been
prepare.
a good idea.
Mhm.
Yes, that was an
I'm
error.
full of good ideas.
Why you get
Okay.
paid to do that?
In that note,
We get it. You
um,
send stuff way far into outer space. for
I
crying
know.
Out loud. Writing
Anyways.
books left and right.
I'll do say one thing. My wife, we were talking about it, and she said, "What was Neelix like the Dr. Phlox character from Enterprise?"
I'm so glad you brought that up.
And-
I love it. I love it.
And yes, in a sense that because he's the moral center and the one who is trying to be as optimistic about everything, but I do think that Dr. Phlox comes off as a better character because there is a moral center to him. And that also follows with your favorite character, Adina, Dr. McCoy, in that he's that moral center. on the ship.
I would agree that of calling Dr. Phlox the moral center of Enterprise. I would agree. And I agree that Dr. Phlox is definitely one of my favorite characters in Enterprise, and that character works so well. And as much as I like Neelix in Voyager, I don't know if I would call him the moral center.
Yeah,
Okay.
Especially
I would call,
because he
or the
spends,
emotional, maybe the emotional center.
Yeah, which is not the
It's-
same thing.
Yeah,
It's weird
okay.
because I never thought about it in the sense
Can I,
of
can,
like
I, can I change my testimony right now? I'd like to update my
Let the record
testimony.
reflect.
I'd like to strike the word emotion. Anyway,
So other than they are the most kind of like humanoid aliens-ish in the crew, I don't necessarily see a lot of similarity between Phlox and Neelix. They have very different educational and backgrounds. You know, Dr. Phlox was like married 5 times and has a bunch of kids. Neelix's family was like destroyed, you know, killed in a war. Like, I don't really see a lot of similarities between them, other than they have, because they're alien, and then they have unique knowledge because they're aliens. Really, I don't see them as.
I always just thought it.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was going to say, I always just thought of them as similar kind of characters, just because, like, obviously different professions, as you say, but like they're both like very jovial, and it's like they try to be super positive all the time. And I always felt like Dr. Phlox is what they hoped Neelix was going to be, and Dr. like in the sense that like the famous line "optimism captain," where he's kind of the one who's just so curious about other cultures. He enjoys cooking, like he enjoys food, and he just like seems to be more. I don't know if happy is the right word. I can't think of. It's hard to describe, but I see where Steve is coming from.
Yeah,
but that is, of course, a tangent that we started.
Well, wasn't Neelix supposed to be the morale officer, basically, too? Isn't that one of his
that
charges?
was his other.
So I think there's that.
No, Neelix is the morale officer, but Dr. Phlox is not the morale officer.
No, he's not the
doctor. He's optimistic, but he's not the morale officer.
No, he's not the morale officer, but he's like very much like someone that you could go to, and he'd try and cheer you up in a very different way than other characters.
That's true.
Because there was no morale officer on Enterprise, the NX-01.
Well, there was the cook, and we never got to see the cook, which is annoying.
And there wasn't really the morale officer on Voyager. That was a made up thing. You know, that was like they kind of just made that up because it's just giving him something to do. But now, I was going to say, well, Dr. Phlox was also, again, curious about alien species and all those things that a little bit align with his profession. I wouldn't say that Neelix had a natural curiosity. He had a lot of knowledge because he'd been out there. But that's not the same thing as the kind of curiosity Dr. Phlox had. Like I said, I feel like these are very,
Neelix
very, very
had a
different.
curiosity when it came to learning about the crew and caring for the crew and being interested in what they felt, what they needed, all that stuff. But again, it's really different. I think the moral center of Voyager is clearly Janeway. And
I'll go with that.
to a degree. I even think you could put Chakotay in there a little bit.
I think
each one had a different take in how they reacted to certain things.
I like that Chakotay was like, that's a whole other discussion about. I think Chakotay is actually a very strong first officer because of how he works with Janeway. But he
would have made a good Maori in New Zealand.
A good Maorian?
Maori, the warrior, the type, because of the tattoo on his face and the kind of
the South Pacific
exterior.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a very South Pacific-ish, a little South Pacific-ish look. A little.
Yeah.
I went to New Zealand once.
So
I have some. I do, and I did see some Maori like things, and I have very phallic souvenir. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
I don't think we ever said phallic before on the podcast. First time.
No, that's the only way I can say it. But there's their art and their sculpture is very pronounced. Right. So I have like a little magnet of a little guy. It's very very
having
Maori.
to do with fertility. Anyways.
No, I don't know if it's specifically fertility. Just it is.
If I ever go to news, talk about a tangent. This is one of our greatest tangents of all time.
I think so.
We used the word fertility for the first time in the big sci-fi podcast history.
Did we?
I think so. I'm going to say yes. I mean,
okay.
Anyway,
valid for sure.
Definitely.
When we talked about Lord of the Rings, because I had gone there too.
That's what I want to talk about.
New Zealand's a great place to go to.
First thing
Everyone's
I will
script is
say if I
canceled.
ever go to New Zealand is you shall not pass as soon as I get off the
Sure.
airplane and see what
No
people
one
do.
said that
They'll
ever.
probably roll their eyes and
It's one of
And
They're
hand you a
right.
sheep because there's 4 sheep for every person in New
Yes.
Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, I want to personally thank you, brother, for talking
Yeah.
about
appreciate that.
making us watch Voyager. I haven't watched it in
Don't,
years.
don't say make us
And-
watch.
You're right. He invited us to watch.
I invited
There
you,
you
but
go.
it's also like
And-
it's for the
Yeah. I felt like I had to if I want to talk about it at all. So I enjoyed these episodes immensely. And
Mhm.
as
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna rewatch Voyager in my spare time, and that might become my exercise, walking on the treadmill
Excellent.
exercise, which I need to
Good
do
choice.
desperately. But Chris, thank you, man. I think I have a renewed interest in Voyager, and a lot of it will be like watching it for the first time again. So
cool. I'm glad to hear it.
Excellent.
Like I love Voyager. I think it's amazing, but there's a lot of issues. But I think there's so much good in the show.
Mhm.
So I appreciate you saying that, and thank you all for a really good discussion about Neelix and all of our tangents. I think this is a good one for tangents. If you're into tangents, I think you're gonna love this
I
episode.
may have broken a new record.
I think so. But thank you all. It's been a lot of fun. And before we go, remember you can find us where you find your favorite podcast. And you know what? Hit up our Facebook group. Just hit us up. Tell us what you think. Share some thoughts. And ask us questions and give us ideas for the future because we'd love to hear them. And once again, thank you all for listening to the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. And remember, if you get in a fight, don't waste food. Talk it out.